If you're tuning into this deep dive today, you likely already understand the sheer gravity of systemic trust.
Right. It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, you know that when you step onto a commercial airliner or when a hospital hooks you up to an automated IV drip or even just swiping your credit card at a local coffee shop.
Exactly. The mundane stuff, too.
Right. You are not really putting your faith in the individual person pressing the buttons. You're putting your life, your privacy, and your money into the hands of an invisible, complex management system.
Yet you're trusting that thousands of individual, mundane actions were executed correctly, checked, double-checked, and validated.
But how do we actually know? I mean, we all know companies like to say, trust us, our quality is our top priority.
Well, they love saying that.
They do. But in the professional world, trust us is not a strategy. We need a mechanism to definitively prove that the invisible scaffolding holding these organizations together is actually sound.
Which is, frankly, an incredibly tall order when you stop to think about the sheer scale of modern global operations.
Definitely.
We aren't just checking if a baker remembered to put yeast in the bread anymore, We're evaluating massive, decentralized, multi-tiered supply chains.
Interconnected cybersecurity meshes.
Yes, and environmental sustainability practices across dozens of international borders.
Yeah.
The assumption that safety or quality just naturally occurs because a company has good intentions, well, that's a massive operational blind spot.
It has to be engineered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These attributes have to be engineered right into the DNA of the organization. And the only legitimate mechanism we have to verify that engineering is through the rigorous, standardized process of auditing.
And that brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at the absolute foundation of that verification process.
The bedrock.
Yeah. We're unpacking the newly updated BSEN ISO 19011.2026. This is the international guidelines document for auditing management systems.
A bit of a mouthful, I know.
It is, but if you've been in the industry for any length of time, you know that auditing can sometimes devolve into this, bureaucratic box-ticking exercise.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if the people running it don't fundamentally understand the rules of engagement.
Right. So today, we're structuring this as an advanced masterclass for you. We're going to systematically analyze the first 4 clauses of this standard in their original sequence.
One by one.
Exactly. We're stripping away the assumptions and looking at the strict boundaries, the specific vocabulary, and the ethical bedrock that allows an auditor to walk into a complex corporation and extract the objective truth.
Because it really is the ultimate playbook for the profession.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, if you do not have a total command over the foundational rules of how an audit is initiated, bounded, and executed well, any findings you produce are utterly defensible by the auditee.
They can just throw them out.
They will. You could deploy the most brilliant engineers in the world to evaluate a facility, but if their underlying auditing methodology is flawed or biased or out of scope, their conclusions cannot be trusted.
So mastering these first 4 clauses isn't just about reading a dry document. It's about internalizing the architecture of accountability.
I love that phrase, architecture of accountability.
Well, let's get right into it then. Clause 1, the scope. Because, in any major undertaking, you have to establish the parameters of the sandbox before you start building.
You really do.
The scope dictates exactly what this document provides, and equally important, who it's actually designed to serve. So what is the actual territory claimed by Clause 1 of the 2026 update?
So the territory is surprisingly vast, but highly structured. Clause 1 explicitly states that the standard provides guidance on auditing management systems. And it breaks this guidance down into 4 distinct pillars.
Okay, 4 pillars.
Right. First, it covers the principles of auditing, so the ethical and professional framework. Second, it covers managing an audit program, which is the strategic, high-level orchestration of multiple audits over time.
Sort of the bird's eye view.
Exactly. Third, it covers the actual conducting of management system audits, the tactical, on-the-ground execution. And fourth, it covers evaluating the competence of the individuals involved.
Wait, I want to pause on that 4th pillar because evaluating competence is usually where things get really contentious in the real world.
Oh, very much so.
It's not just about evaluating the auditor who shows up with a clipboard, right?
Right.
It extends further up the chain.
Much further up the chain. The standard demands that the individuals managing the audit program must also be evaluated for competence.
Wow. Okay, so the bosses, too.
Yes, it's a critical fail-safe. You cannot have a highly skilled auditor being directed by an audit program manager who fundamentally doesn't understand the objectives or the risks of the organization.
That makes total sense. The guidance applies to the entire human apparatus facilitating the audit.
Precisely.
And as for who this is for, I noticed the standard claims universal applicability. It says it's designed for all organizations that need to plan and conduct management system audits or manage an audit program.
Which is a massive umbrella.
It really is. I mean, we're talking about a boutique 20-person software firm trying to prove their information security all the way up to a Tier 1 aerospace manufacturer with 80,000 employees.
And a dozen global facilities.
Mm-hmm.
That universality is exactly what makes ISO 19011 so unique. The scale of the organization changes, the technical complexity of the widget they're producing changes, but the underlying methodology scales perfectly.
It's just plug and play at any size.
Yeah. But I'd argue the most fascinating part of Clause 1 is a specific caveat tucked into the text. It explicitly notes that the application of this document to other types of audits is entirely possible.
Wait, other types? Like stepping outside the realm of quality or environmental management systems entirely?
Yep.
So could a firm use this architecture to run a massive financial audit or, I don't know, a highly specialized regulatory safety inspection?
They absolutely could,
Yeah.
and many actually do. The standard specifies that you can apply these guidelines to other audits, provided that special consideration is given to the specific competence needed.
Ah, right. The competence piece again.
Exactly. Think about it. The mechanics of gathering evidence, interviewing personnel, ensuring independence, and documenting findings, those are universally applicable disciplines.
Right. The process is the same.
Exactly. If you're a financial regulator, the specific numbers you're looking at will require a CPA's competence. But the process by which that CPA initiates the audit, conducts the opening meeting, and structures the final report that can be directly mapped to ISO 19011.
That really reframes the entire document for me. It's not just a manual for ISO certifications.
No, not at all.
It's basically a foundational blueprint for empirical investigation in a corporate setting. If you master this architecture, you essentially have the operational scaffolding to audit almost anything.
Provided you bring the right technical translators into the room with you, yes. That is the power of a well-defined scope. It tells you exactly what the tool was built for, while quietly acknowledging its potential to be a multi-tool if wielded by competent hands.
Okay, so the boundaries are set. We know what the playbook does. That brings us to Clause 2, which is titled Normative References. And this is where the standard does something incredibly interesting, almost by doing nothing at all.
Right. Clause 2 is exactly one sentence long.
Wait, really? Just one sentence?
Yep. It simply states, there are no normative references in this document.
Okay, which, to an outsider, sounds absurd. Why dedicate an entire numbered clause just to tell the reader that the clause is empty? It feels like a formatting error.
Or a committee just trying to hit a standardized chapter count, right?
It's exactly.
You'd think so, but it's actually a profound structural statement, especially for those of us who have spent years wading through international standards.
And so?
Well, in the ecosystem of ISO documentation, a normative reference is a legal or technical dependency. It's a formal declaration that in order to properly understand the standard you're reading, you are required to go read, understand, and often purchase another specific document.
Oh, man. It's the ultimate dependency bloat. I remember looking at a specialized manufacturing standard once, and its normative references pointed to 3 other standards.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah. I went to those 3, and they each pointed to 2 more. Before you know it, you're trying to build a single piece of hardware, but you have to cross-reference 15 different international codes just to understand the foundational vocabulary.
Exactly. It creates a massive barrier to entry. So, by explicitly dedicating Clause 2 to state that there are 0 normative references, the ISO committee is making a definitive declaration of independence.
They're saying it stands alone.
Yes. They are saying that this 2026 update is a completely self-contained, standalone universe. Everything you need to know about the methodology of auditing is contained within these specific pages.
That democratizes the knowledge so much. I mean, if you're an internal audit manager at a mid-sized firm, you don't need to request a massive budget to go buy a library of supplementary text just to figure out how to run your audit program.
The playbook is complete right out of the box. It respects the user's operational reality.
Yes.
By keeping the framework centralized, it completely eliminates the excuse of, well, we didn't follow that auditing principle because it was buried in some secondary reference document.
Right. The entire masterclass is right here in one place.
Exactly.
So we have our boundaries in Clause 1, and we have our standalone toolkit confirmed in Clause 2. Now we enter the belly of the beast. Clause 3, terms and definitions.
The auditor's lexicon.
Yeah, the lexicon. And we're not just going to read a dictionary to you, because that is how you lose an audience in 5 minutes. Instead, we need to explore why this specific vocabulary is so fiercely guarded.
Because in the realm of auditing, precision of language isn't just a stylistic preference, it's a legal and operational necessity.
Right, there's no room for, I thought you meant this.
Exactly. If an auditor and a plant manager are using the same word, but they hold two slightly different definitions of that word, the entire audit process will break down into a semantic argument.
The definitions in Clause 3 act as the universal translator between the auditing body and the organization being audited. And there are 27 terms defined here in the 2026 update.
That's a lot of terms.
It is. So, to make these 27 terms practical, let's group them into logical buckets. And to really test the stress points of these definitions, let's establish a high-stakes scenario. Let's use a fictional company, Apex Dynamics.
Okay, I like it. What do they make?
Let's say they manufacture highly advanced quantum core medical devices. These are machines where a single manufacturing defect could literally cost lives.
So their management systems have to be flawless.
Exactly. It's a perfect proving ground. Let's open our first bucket of terms, which establishes the basic taxonomy, the types of audits. This covers terms 3.1 through 3.4.
We have to start with the granddaddy of them all, term 3.1, audit.
Right.
The standard defines it as a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining objective evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which audit criteria are fulfilled.
Systematic, independent, and documented. Those three adjectives do a lot of heavy lifting.
They really do.
It means a CEO can't just walk onto the Apex Dynamics assembly floor, look around, chat with a few floor managers, and declare, everything looks great, we've audited the line.
Right. That is an observation. It might be a valuable management walkabout, but it is fundamentally not an audit because it lacks a systematic structure and independent documentation.
That's the vital distinction. And the standard further categorizes this systematic process by who is actually conducting it, right? We have first-party, second-party, and third-party audits.
Yes. So first-party audits are internal. That's Apex Dynamics deploying its own internal auditing team to check its own systems.
It's self-reflection, driven by management review and internal continuous improvement goals.
Exactly. But self-reflection only gets you so far, which is where second-party audits come in. These are external audits conducted by parties having an interest in the organization.
Like a supplier audit.
Yes, the classic example. If Apex Dynamics is buying specialized microchips from a vendor in Taiwan, Apex doesn't just cross its fingers and hope the chips are good. They send their own auditing team to Taiwan to audit that supplier's facility.
And the leverage in a second-party audit is massive, isn't it? Because it's directly tied to a commercial contract. The auditee knows that if they fail this audit, they lose the buyer's business.
Right. Conversely, a major hospital system might send its own auditors to Apex Dynamics before agreeing to purchase their quantum core devices. In both cases, the auditor has a direct, vested commercial interest in the outcome.
Which brings us to the ultimate neutral ground, the third-party audit. These are conducted by independent auditing organizations like certification bodies or governmental regulators.
The folks with no commercial skin in the game?
Exactly. They don't care who buys what. If Apex Dynamics wants to prove to the world that they meet the ISO 13485 standard for medical device quality, they must hire a completely independent third party to come in, evaluate the evidence without bias, and issue the certificate.
The third-party auditor doesn't care if Apex Dynamics makes $1 billion or goes bankrupt. Their only allegiance is to the integrity of the standard itself.
I love that. Pure neutrality.
But this gets incredibly complex when we look at terms 3.2 and 3.3. Term 3.2 is the combined audit, and term 3.3 is the joint audit. On paper, these sound like synonyms, but logistically, they are entirely different beasts.
Oh, I've seen these trip up even veteran audit managers. Let's break it down using Apex Dynamics. A combined audit, term 3.2, occurs when two or more management systems of a single auditee are audited together at the exact same time.
Right.
So Apex has a quality management system to ensure the devices work and an environmental management system to ensure the factory isn't dumping toxic chemicals.
Yeah, two separate systems.
If a single auditing firm sends a team to evaluate both of those systems concurrently during the same week, that is a combined audit.
It's highly efficient. You don't have to interrupt the factory floor twice. The auditor can look at a chemical storage process and evaluate it simultaneously for both quality control parameters and environmental compliance.
It minimizes audit fatigue for the organization.
Exactly.
It's like having one incredibly thorough inspector check your restaurant's kitchen for both food safety temperatures and fire hazards during the same visit.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
Now, contrast that with term 3.3, the joint audit. This is when two or more separate auditing organizations cooperate to audit a single auditee.
Okay, so this is a logistical high-wire act. Imagine Apex Dynamics is undergoing a major investigation. You have an auditing team from the European Medicines Agency and simultaneously an auditing team from the US FDA.
Oh, what?
And perhaps a third-party ISO certification body, too, all descending on the Apex facility on the same day, sharing the same audit schedule, and requesting the same documents.
The friction there must be unbelievable. You have different auditing organizations, potentially with slightly different interpretations of the evidence, trying to share the floor without stepping on each other's toes.
The auditee is basically playing air traffic controller for multiple agencies.
Which is exactly why the definitions are so vital. If you agree to a joint audit, you need to know exactly how the power dynamics between the cooperating auditing organizations will be managed.
Absolutely. But whether it's combined, joint, or internal, the 2026 standard has heavily formalized a concept that changes how all of these are conducted. And that's term 3.4, remote auditing method.
Yes. The definition here is deceptively simple. It's a method used for conducting audit activities from any place other than the location of the auditee.
Deceptively simple is right, because the implications of this in 2026 are staggering. We aren't just talking about doing a document review over a Zoom call anymore, are we?
Not at all. Remote auditing has evolved into a highly technical discipline. With Apex Dynamics, a remote audit might involve auditors logging into secure, read-only portals of the company's live ERP system to watch supply chain data flow in real time.
Wow.
Or it might involve an auditor sitting in London directing a floor manager wearing a high-definition augmented reality headset through the Apex facility in Tokyo, asking them to zoom in on specific machine calibration stickers.
That is wild. The standard is officially recognizing that physical proximity is no longer a prerequisite for objective verification. But, I mean, that introduces a whole new layer of vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if I'm auditing remotely, how do I know the person on the other end of the headset isn't purposefully angling the camera away from a glaring safety violation? Or how do I verify that the digital twin data I'm looking at hasn't been scrubbed?
You've hit on the exact tension the standard is trying to navigate here. Remote auditing requires a massive upgrade in the auditor's technological competence. You have to be able to audit the integrity of the data stream before you can even begin to audit the data itself.
You have to audit the audit tools.
Essentially, yes. You have to establish protocols for connection failures, data privacy, anti-tampering. The inclusion of this term signifies that auditing is no longer just a physical inspection, it's an exercise in data forensics.
That is a massive paradigm shift. All right, let's move to our second bucket of definitions, the blueprint. This covers terms 3.5 through 3.7. This is how we map out the strategy versus the tactics.
And we have to start by aggressively separating term 3.5, the audit program, from term 3.7, the audit plan.
It is astonishing how often these two terms are conflated in corporate boardrooms. The audit program, term 3.5, is defined as the overarching arrangements for a set of one or more audits planned for a specific time frame and directed towards a specific purpose.
Right, it's the macro-level strategy.
It's the architecture of the entire year. If I am the Global Director of Compliance at Apex Dynamics, my audit program outlines every single audit that will happen globally across all our facilities over the next 12 months.
It dictates the budget, identifies the massive overarching risks, assigns the lead auditors, and sets the schedule. It's the 30,000-foot view.
Exactly. The program is managed by the audit program manager, but the audit plan, term 3.7, is the microscopic view.
The plan is the description of the activities and arrangements for one individual audit.
So if the audit program says, we will conduct a third-party ISO 9001 audit at the Tokyo facility in October, the audit plan is the specific hour-by-hour itinerary created by the lead auditor for that specific week in Tokyo.
Yes. The plan dictates that at 9:00 a.m. on Tuesday, we're interviewing the lead engineer of the quantum core line. And at 11:00 a.m., we're reviewing the calibration logs in the server room.
The program is the strategy, the plan is the tactical execution. And the bridge that connects the macro to the micro is term 3.6, the audit scope.
The scope, the all-important scope.
It really is. The scope defines the absolute extent and boundaries of the audit. It explicitly lists the physical locations, the virtual locations, the organizational functions, the activities, and the specific time period that the audit will cover.
Because the scope is the most important legal document in the entire process.
Without a doubt. Because in any project, scope creep is the ultimate enemy. Let's say the audit scope for Apex Dynamics strictly states that we are auditing the manufacturing process for the new quantum core devices produced between January and June.
That's the box we are playing in.
Right. And what happens if the auditor, while reviewing the quantum core data, notices a file folder on the desk labeled Legacy Pacemaker Failures July?
This is the classic auditor's dilemma. Human curiosity screams at you to open that folder. It says failures. It sounds dangerous. It sounds like a massive risk.
Right, you want to know.
But if the auditor opens that folder and starts demanding interviews about legacy pacemakers, they have committed a cardinal sin. They violated the scope.
They are operating outside of their authorized boundary?
Exactly. And the auditee has every right. In fact, they have an obligation to shut the auditor down and refuse to answer.
Which is incredibly counterintuitive for people who think auditing is just about finding anything that's wrong. An audit is not a fishing expedition. It is a targeted strike.
It really is. If you operate outside the scope, any evidence you gather is procedurally invalid. If the auditor truly believes the legacy pacemaker folder represents a catastrophic risk, the correct procedure is not to go rogue.
Right, you don't just start investigating.
No. The correct procedure is to pause, communicate with the audit client and the audit program manager, and formally request an expansion of the audit scope.
You have to rewrite the rules of the game before you can play on the new field. It forces discipline. All right, assuming we are staying rigidly within our scope, we move to our third bucket, the evidence trail.
This covers terms 3.8 through 3.12, plus a few related terms.
This bucket is essentially the epistemology of auditing. It defines how we actually know what is true.
It starts with defining the yardstick. Term 3.24 is a requirement, which is simply a need or expectation that is stated, generally implied, or obligatory. But term 3.8 is the critical one, audit criteria.
And that is the set of requirements used as a reference against which objective evidence is compared.
The criteria is the rule book. For Apex Dynamics, the criteria might be the ISO 13485 standard, plus local European medical device regulations, plus Apex's own internal standard operating procedure for cleanroom sanitization.
So that combination is the criteria. It's what the company swore they were doing.
To figure out if they are actually doing it, the auditor must collect evidence. But ISO 1911 makes a razor-sharp philosophical distinction here. We have term 3.9, objective evidence, and term 3.9, audit evidence.
I want to push back on this distinction because a lot of junior auditors struggle here. They argue that if evidence is objective, it's automatically audit evidence. I mean, a fact is a fact, right? Why are we splitting hairs?
Because context is everything. The standard defines objective evidence as data supporting the existence or verity of something. It is raw reality. It can be obtained through observation, measurement, or test.
Okay, so if I walk into the Apex Dynamics facility and I see a large puddle of hydraulic fluid on the floor next to a forklift, that is objective evidence. It is a verifiable fact. The fluid exists. The puddle is 3 feet wide.
Yes. But is it audit evidence?
Ah.
The standard defines audit evidence as records, statements of fact, or other information which are relevant to the audit criteria and verifiable.
Okay, relevance is the filter.
Exactly.
If my audit criteria for the specific audit is purely focused on the cybersecurity encryption of the patient data transmitted by the medical device, then the puddle of hydraulic fluid on the factory floor, while dangerous and objectively real, is completely irrelevant to my criteria.
Therefore, it is not audit evidence.
I cannot write a nonconformity about the puddle because it has nothing to do with data encryption, even if it's a safety hazard.
Precisely. The auditor is not a vacuum cleaner, indiscriminately sucking up every negative fact in the building. The auditor is a metal detector, tuned to a very specific frequency, the criteria, and ignoring everything else.
That's a great way to put it. Now, once you have gathered valid audit evidence, you must evaluate it against the audit criteria. The result of that evaluation is term 3.11, an audit finding.
You hold the evidence in one hand, you hold the criteria in the other, and you compare them.
Right. You look at the server logs showing encryption keys were updated every 90 days. That's the evidence. And you look at the IT policy requiring encryption keys to be updated every 30 days. That's the criteria. The comparison generates a finding.
And that finding will definitively point in one of two directions. It will either indicate term 3.21, conformity, which means the requirement was fulfilled, the evidence matches the criteria, or it will indicate term 3.22, nonconformity, which is the non-fulfillment of a requirement. The evidence proves the criteria was violated.
So the 90-day update versus the 30-day rule. That is a clear nonconformity. There's no gray area. And as an auditor, you spend days, sometimes weeks, gathering hundreds or thousands of these individual findings. Some conform, some do not. What happens at the end?
You synthesize all of it.
Yeah.
You consider every individual finding in the context of the overarching audit objectives, and you arrive at term 3.1, the audit conclusion.
The conclusion is the final verdict.
Yes.
It's the summary statement that tells the board of directors, despite a few minor nonconformities in documentation, the overarching management system is effective and robust. Or, alternatively, the systemic failure to update encryption keys represents a catastrophic breakdown of the security framework.
That evidence trail from criteria to audit evidence to finding to conclusion is the unbreakable chain of custody for truth in an organization. If you break any link in that chain, the conclusion is invalid.
Okay, we have the blueprint and we have the evidence trail. Let's open bucket 4, the people. Who are the actual characters operating this machinery? We have terms 3.13 through 3.18 plus 3.23.
We begin with the audit client, term 3.13. This is the organization or person requesting the audit, and we have the auditee, term 3.14, which is the organization being audited.
And the power dynamic between these two defines the tone of the audit, doesn't it? If Apex Dynamics is auditing its own internal departments, Apex is both the client and the auditee. It's a collaborative effort.
Usually, yes.
But if a massive government regulator is the client and Apex Dynamics is the auditee, the tone is entirely different. The client holds the power and the auditee is on the defensive.
Absolutely. Navigating that dynamic is the job of the audit team, term 3.15, which is led by an auditor, term 3.16. An auditor is the person who conducts the audit. Simple enough. But as we discussed earlier, modern systems are incredibly complex.
Right. An auditor might be an expert in quality methodologies, but they might not possess a PhD in quantum physics.
Which brings us to a highly regulated role, term 3.17, the technical expert.
This is where egos tend to clash. The standard defines a technical expert as a person who provides specific knowledge or expertise to the audit team. But it places a massive, bold-faced restriction on them, doesn't it?
It does. The standard explicitly states that a technical expert does not act as an auditor in the audit team.
Let's play this out at Apex Dynamics. The audit team brings in a brilliant physicist as a technical expert to evaluate the quantum core algorithms. The physicist looks at the code, turns to the lead auditor, and says, "This code is garbage. I'm writing a major nonconformity right now. Give me the forms."
The lead auditor must immediately stop them. The technical expert does not have the authority to determine findings, gather evidence independently, or conduct formal interviews on their own.
Their sole job is to translate the complex reality of the quantum physics into plain language so that the auditor can evaluate it against the criteria.
Exactly. The expert is the advisor, the auditor is the judge. The expert might say, the code allows a 5% variance in thermal output. The auditor then checks the criteria, sees the limit is 2%, and the auditor writes the nonconformity.
If you let the technical expert take the wheel, they often ignore the audit methodology entirely and just start arguing about industry best practices, which completely derails the audit scope.
It happens all the time. It requires strict discipline from the lead auditor to manage that expert. And we see a similar restriction with term 3.18, the observer. This is an individual who accompanies the audit team, but does not act as an auditor or a technical expert.
Why would you just have someone tagging along?
Often, it's a junior auditor in training, shadowing the team, or it could be a union representative or a regulatory liaison, ensuring the audit is conducted fairly.
But the rule for the observer is absolute silence and neutrality. They cannot ask questions, they cannot point out evidence, and they cannot interfere.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, I bet. If you're an observer and you see an Apex Dynamics employee about to accidentally delete a massive database during an audit interview, your instinct is to yell, "Stop."
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But the moment you intervene, you alter the environment. You become part of the system rather than an observer of it.
Which ties perfectly into the final term in this bucket, term 3.23, competence. The standard defines this as the ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended results.
Notice it doesn't say the possession of a certificate or a degree.
Exactly. You can have a master's degree in quality assurance, but if you lack the interpersonal skills to interview a hostile plant manager or the discipline to manage a rogue technical expert, you lack competence. Competence is about execution in the real world.
Well said. Let's move to our final bucket of definitions. Bucket 5, the system and results. This is the ultimate target of the audit. Terms 3.19, 3.109, and 3.25 through 3.27.
Okay, lay it on me.
We start with term 3.19, the management system. It is defined as a set of interrelated or interacting elements of an organization to establish policies and objectives and processes to achieve those objectives.
It's the invisible nervous system of the company. It's not the physical conveyor belts or the robots at Apex Dynamics. It's the training matrix that ensures the operator knows how to run the robot.
Exactly. It's the preventative maintenance schedule. It's the emergency protocol for a power outage. And that system is made up of term 3.25, a process, a set of interacting activities that use inputs to deliver an intended result.
You input raw titanium, code, and labor. You output a quantum core widget. That is the process. Now, how do we evaluate if that process is actually any good? The standard gives us two highly distinct metrics.
Right. Term 3.26 is performance, which is simply a measurable result. But term 3.27 is effectiveness, which is the extent to which planned activities are realized and planned results are achieved.
Let's linger on this because confusing performance with effectiveness is how massive corporations collapse while their dashboards are flashing green.
Oh, it's a classic failure mode.
Let's say the Apex Dynamics customer service call center has a performance metric. Average call time must be under 60 seconds. That's a measurable result. The manager runs an audit, looks at the dashboard, and sees the average call time is 45 seconds. The performance is spectacular.
But the auditor digs deeper. They look at the effectiveness of the process. The intended result of a customer service call isn't just to be fast, it is to solve the customer's problem.
Right. And the auditor discovers that the call center agents are achieving the 45-second performance metric by simply hanging up on angry customers or transferring them into a dead-end automated menu.
The performance is incredibly high, but the effectiveness is absolute zero. The planned result, customer satisfaction, and problem resolution is completely failing.
A superficial audit just checks performance. A masterclass audit evaluates effectiveness. You have to ask, is this machine actually driving us to the correct destination, or are we just speeding toward a cliff?
That is a brilliant distinction, and it leads us to the final definition, which is arguably the intellectual core of modern management system theory, term 3.20, risk.
All right, this is where the 2026 update demands a total rewiring of our brains. Usually when we hear the word risk in a corporate setting, we immediately think of danger.
Fire, lawsuits, hacks.
Exactly. The risk of a factory catching fire, the risk of a massive cyber attack, it's always negative.
But ISO 19011 defines risk in a completely neutral mathematical way. Risk is the effective uncertainty, period. And the notes to this entry explicitly state that an effect is a deviation from the expected and that deviation can be positive or negative.
Positive risk. It sounds like an oxymoron, but it is such a profound concept. Uncertainty goes in both directions.
Let's apply it to Apex Dynamics. Apex is launching their new quantum core device. There is massive uncertainty in the market. The negative risk is obvious, the technology is too advanced, hospitals don't adopt it, and Apex loses millions in R&D.
Sure.
But what is the positive risk, the opportunity?
Well, the positive risk is that the device is so revolutionary that every major hospital and network on the planet immediately orders 1,000 units. The demand spikes 500% over the most optimistic projections.
That is an effective uncertainty. But if Apex Dynamics management system hasn't planned for that positive risk, if their supply chain can't scale, if their quality control collapses under the volume, if their customer support is overwhelmed, that positive opportunity will quickly destroy the company's reputation.
Exactly. A world-class management system doesn't just build walls to keep the bad things out. It builds sails to catch the unexpected winds of success. Therefore, a competent auditor evaluates how the organization manages the entire spectrum of uncertainty.
They audit the company's readiness for disaster and their readiness for unprecedented opportunity.
It transforms the audit from a defensive, punitive exercise into a deeply strategic evaluation of the company's robustness.
All right, take a breath. We have made it through the lexicon.
We did it.
We know the boundaries from Clause 1. We know the standard as a standalone toolkit from Clause 2. And we have mastered the precise, nuanced vocabulary of Clause 3. But here is the harsh truth of the profession. You can hand a pristine dictionary and a perfect blueprint to a corrupt, egotistical, or lazy person, and you will still get a disastrous audit.
Knowing the words does not make you an auditor.
Not at all.
Methodology and vocabulary are dangerous weapons if they are not governed by an unyielding ethical code. Which is why Clause 4 is the beating heart of this entire document. Clause 4, Principles of Auditing. This is the auditor's code of conduct.
Clause 4 outlines 7 fundamental principles. The standard is unequivocal here. Adherence to these principles is a strict prerequisite for providing audit conclusions that are relevant and sufficient.
It's the great equalizer.
It is. It ensures that if I walk into Apex Dynamics on a Monday and you walk into Apex Dynamics on a Tuesday, completely independently of each other, we will rely on the same ethical framework and arrive at similar objective conclusions. It removes the wild card of human personality from the equation.
Let's break down these 7 pillars. Principle 4.2 is integrity, the foundation of professionalism. It dictates that auditors must perform their work ethically, with honesty and responsibility.
They must only undertake activities if they are competent to do so, perform their work in an impartial manner, and remain fair and unbiased.
The key phrase in this section is that auditors must be sensitive to any influences that may be exerted on their judgment while carrying out an audit. This isn't just about refusing a briefcase full of cash. Outright bribery is rare. The real threat to integrity is the subtle psychological influence.
The slow erosion of objectivity. Let's say you're a third-party auditor, you've been visiting the Apex Dynamics facility for a week. The plant manager is incredibly charismatic. They take you out to a 5-star steakhouse. They ask about your kids. They treat you like a VIP.
And the next day, you find a borderline nonconformity on the production line.
Right. It's a gray area. Human nature, reciprocity, makes you want to let it slide because the manager's a good guy.
Integrity means having the profound self-awareness to recognize that subconscious pressure, neutralize it, and right the nonconformity anyway. It requires a spine of steel.
And that spine is immediately tested by Principle 4.3, fair presentation. This is the obligation to report truthfully and accurately. It demands that audit findings, conclusions, and reports must reflect the audit activities truthfully.
On the surface, that sounds easy, just write down what happened, but the standard includes a brutal requirement here. It states that auditors must report significant obstacles encountered during the audit and unresolved diverging opinions between the audit team and the auditee.
Oh, yeah.
I want to know how you actually handle an unresolved diverging opinion in the real world, because it sounds like a nightmare.
It is the ultimate test of professional maturity. Let's say you are auditing the thermal stress test logs at Apex Dynamics. You believe the logs show a clear violation of the criteria, and you issue a major nonconformity. The lead engineer passionately disagrees. They argue that the 2026 quantum core dissipates heat differently, rendering the old criteria obsolete. You debate for an hour. Neither of you backs down. It is an unresolved, diverging opinion.
The auditor holds the pen. The temptation is to just write the nonconformity, pull rank, and bury the engineer's objection. I'm the auditor. My word is final.
But Principle 4.3 strictly forbids that. Fair presentation demands transparency over triumph. You must suppress your ego. In your final formal report, you must write the nonconformity, and you must meticulously and fairly document the engineer's dissenting opinion and the rationale behind it.
The report is not a monument to your infallibility. It's an objective historical record of the audit, complete with its messy, unresolved technical disputes.
Exactly. It leaves a trail for the next set of experts to review. It is intellectual honesty at its highest level. Moving to Principle 4.4, due professional care, the application of diligence and judgment in auditing.
The cornerstone of this principle is consistency. Auditors should exercise due care irrespective of the perceived importance of the task they perform.
This combats the audit fatigue we all suffer from. At 9 a.m., you're auditing the core algorithmic safety protocols of the medical device. You're hyper-focused, taking rigorous notes.
But at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, you're auditing the inventory tags on the janitorial supply closet.
Right. The stakes feel infinitely lower. Your brain wants to coast. Due professional care means you apply the exact same rigorous methodology, the exact same sampling techniques, and the exact same judgment to the mop buckets as you do to the quantum core.
You do not get sloppy just because the subject matter feels mundane.
Because a chemical spill from a poorly managed janitorial closet can shut down a clean room just as fast as a software glitch. Everything is connected.
Principle 4.5 is confidentiality, security and privacy of information. Auditors are granted unparalleled, deeply intrusive access to an organization's most guarded secrets. Strategic plans, proprietary source code, unreleased financial data, employee disciplinary records.
And the standard goes way beyond just saying, don't leave your laptop unlocked at the airport. It specifically mandates that audit information should not be used inappropriately for personal gain by the auditor or the audit client, or in a manner detrimental to the legitimate interests of the auditee.
This is the insider trading clause.
It absolutely is.
If you're auditing Apex Dynamics and during a document review you stumble across a highly confidential merger agreement that will undoubtedly send their stock price soaring next week, you cannot act on that. You cannot buy stock. You cannot tell your spouse to buy stock. You must seal that knowledge away in a vault in your mind.
If an auditor breaches confidentiality, they don't just ruin their own career, they poison the well for the entire profession. If auditees believe auditors are corporate spies, they will stop sharing information, and the entire ecosystem of trust collapses.
Which leads directly into Principle 4.6 independence. This is the basis for the impartiality of the audit and objectivity of the conclusions.
Auditors should be independent of the activity being audited wherever practicable, and must act in a manner free from bias and conflict of interest.
Now, independence is relatively straightforward for a third-party auditor flying in from another country, but let's look at the friction point first-party internal audits.
Yes, the classic conflict.
The auditor literally receives their paycheck, their health care, and their performance reviews from the very company they are investigating. How can true independence exist in that environment?
The standard is deeply pragmatic here. It acknowledges the paradox. It states that when it is not possible for internal auditors to be fully independent of the activity, every effort should be made to remove bias and encourage objectivity. It requires building institutional firewalls.
A hard rule I've seen is that an internal auditor should never, under any circumstances, audit their own department.
You cannot grade your own homework.
Furthermore, they cannot audit the department of a manager who has direct influence over the auditor's promotion trajectory. If you're an IT auditor, but you're hoping to get promoted into the cybersecurity division next year, you cannot audit the cybersecurity division.
The conflict of interest is too great. The urge to write a glowing report to curry favor with your future boss will destroy your objectivity. Management must protect the internal auditor from retaliation and protect the process from sycophancy.
Let's transition to Principle 4.7 evidence-based approach, the rational method for reaching reliable and reproducible audit conclusions in a systematic audit process.
This principle forces us to confront the harsh realities of physics and time. Audits operate in the real world. You have finite resources, finite budgets, and finite timeframes.
If Apex Dynamics produces 3 million widgets a year and generates 50 million lines of server logs, it is mathematically impossible for an auditor to check every single data point during a 4-day audit.
Therefore, the evidence-based approach relies entirely on the science of sampling. Audit evidence is fundamentally based on samples of the available information, but how you choose that sample dictates the validity of your entire conclusion.
I used to use a soup analogy here, stirring a pot and taking a spoonful, but let's elevate it to the reality of what modern auditors actually face. Suppose you are evaluating the error rate of Apex Dynamics automated welding robots. There are 10,000 weld records from the past month.
If you just take the first 50 records from Monday morning, your sample is biased. Maybe the robots work perfectly on a fresh calibration on Monday, but drift out of tolerance by Thursday. Your sample will falsely indicate conformity.
An evidence-based approach requires statistical rigor. You need a stratified random sample. You pull records from different shifts, different operators, different days of the week, and different machines.
An appropriate use of sampling is closely related to the confidence that can be placed in the audit conclusions. If your sample is flawed, your evidence is flawed, and your multi-million-dollar conclusion is a fiction.
It's the difference between an anecdote and data. Finally, we reach the capstone principle, the one that governs all the others in the modern era. Principle 4.8, risk-based approach.
We discussed risk as a concept earlier, but as a guiding principle, how does this dictate the auditor's behavior on the floor?
A risk-based approach considers risks and opportunities, and it substantively influences how audits are planned, conducted, and reported. It is the ultimate prioritization engine.
It ensures that audits are focused on matters that are genuinely significant for the audit client and for achieving the objectives. Historically, auditors often used a flat checklist. You spend an hour auditing the company's paper recycling policy, and you spend an hour auditing the server firewall architecture.
A risk-based approach looks at that and says it is operational malpractice.
Exactly. If the paper recycling policy fails, some cardboard goes to a landfill. It's not ideal, but the company survives. If the server firewall architecture fails, patient data is leaked, Apex Dynamics is hit with a billion-dollar lawsuit, and the company ceases to exist.
The risk-based approach demands that you allocate your finite time and resources proportionally to the severity of the uncertainty. You might spend 3 days intensely drilling into the cybersecurity protocols and 15 minutes verifying the recycling bins.
It prevents auditors from wasting everyone's time chasing trivial, low-stakes nonconformities just to pad out their report, while the core, existential machinery of the organization goes unchecked. It aligns the audit with the strategic realities of the business.
And when you combine all 7 of these principles, when an auditor operates with integrity, embraces fair presentation, exercises due care, maintains confidentiality and independence, grounds their work in statistically valid evidence, and prioritizes based on profound risks, the audit ceases to be a bureaucratic burden.
It becomes the most powerful diagnostic tool a management team can possess.
Wow. Let's pull back and look at the architecture we've explored today. We haven't just read through a standard, we have dissected the anatomy of organizational truth.
We established the universal boundaries in Clause 1, realizing this framework scales from bakeries to aerospace giants.
We acknowledge the power of a self-contained, standalone methodology in Clause 2.
We waded into the deep waters of Clause 3, defining the strict parameters of remote auditing, separating the macro program from the micro plan, understanding why the technical expert must never play the judge, and recognizing that risk encompasses both catastrophic failure and unprecedented opportunity.
And finally, we locked it all down with the unbreakable ethical code of Clause 4, the principles that force an auditor to suppress their ego, protect secrets, and deploy their finite resources against the most existential threats.
These 4 clauses form the unshakable foundation of ISO 19011.2026.
But as we close out this masterclass, we want to leave you with a final forward-looking thought, something to consider as you step back into your own facilities.
If we look closely at the trajectory of this standard, specifically the codification of remote auditing methods in Clause 3.4 and the mandate for a risk-based approach in Principle 4.8, we are forced to ask a provocative question about the future of this entire profession.
Right now, an audit program is still largely anchored in time. We schedule a massive audit event for Q3. We send the humans in. It's episodic.
But we're rapidly entering an era of artificial intelligence, digital twins, and continuous real-time data streaming. If AI tools can be granted secure, remote access to an organization's data streams, continuously monitoring for deviations in performance, instantly spotting when those risks fluctuate outside of acceptable parameters, well, will the future of auditing abandon the concept of a fixed, scheduled event entirely?
Will the audit stop being something that happens to a company once a year and instead become an invisible, continuous, real-time, remote process?
Will that airplane mechanics checklist be validated by a localized AI every single second, rather than sampled by a human inspector once a quarter? The seeds for that monumental paradigm shift are already planted right here in the vocabulary of the 2026 update.
It's a staggering thought. The foundational principles of integrity, evidence, and independence will remain absolute, but the methods and the speed of verification are going to change beyond recognition.
Because at the end of the day, whether it's a human holding a clipboard or an advanced AI analyzing a server farm in real time, it all comes back to that underlying truth.
You want to know that the invisible scaffolding holding up the complex systems we rely on every day is actually strong. You want to know unequivocally that the playbook works. Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.